Hey, all you internet junkies, techie nerds, and brand builders out there. Buckle up, because you're about to dive headfirst into the digital wonderland. Welcome to Cyber Distortion, the only podcast that throws AI, cybersecurity, and personal branding into a blender and serves it up as a delicious brain smoothie that you didn't know you needed. I'm the guest, Larry Roberts, and I'm here to guide you through the labyrinth of the digital age with a sprinkle of humor, a dash of wisdom, and a whole lot of real talk. Picture this. It's like having a heart-to-heart with your friend who just happens to be a whiz at all things tech and branding. Now let's get real for a moment. The digital landscape is like the Wild West, unpredictable, a bit dangerous, but ripe with opportunity. Whether you're hustling to build your personal brand, safeguarding your virtual kingdom, or just trying to make sense of the AI revolution, we've got you covered. Together, we'll decode the mysteries of the cyber world, demystify the art of personal branding, and discover how to bulletproof our digital lives. And yes, we'll have a laugh or two along the way because, let's face it, the internet is a weird and wonderful place, and we're all just trying to figure it out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join us on this wild ride. This is Cyber Distortion, and we're about to turn your digital world upside down. Let's get distorted.
Episode 10, Quantum Branding. Turbocharge your identity with AI. Welcome to Cyber Distortion Podcast. I'm Jason Papillon, along with Kevin Pentecost, and we are bringing you something different tonight. Tonight, we're going into our Season 2, Episode 10 episode, thinking about how do we give you better information outside the box that you haven't thought about before. So tonight we brought on a guest that's going to talk to you more about how you can do better with your brand, utilizing AI and other tools. But this guy is a specialist. This is what he does. He does his own show. He goes on the road and speaks constantly about helping people with their own brand, and he is very good at it. So good that he is the person Kevin and I tapped into to get us started when we start pulling together our podcast. So we're very excited about using this gentleman and having conversations with him and where this all might lead tonight. This is going to just be an open conversation filled with a lot of back and forths and some good content. And we hope that you guys really enjoy it. But before we go any further, Kevin, what do you want to say about it?
Well, I just wanted to throw in that, this is going to be extra fun for me because I've known Larry for about, close to 20 years, maybe 20 years by now. And we worked together in IT for many, many years, worked for the same company for the longest time. And, just got to know each other and work with each other for a long time, became good friends. And Larry actually left me high and dry. He made a bold move here. He decided on his own that he was going to leave the corporate world and go take on this new career and leave this very stable 100-plus-year-old company and well-paying job to chase his dreams, which is awesome. I'm actually happy for him. And he became what is known now as the Red Hat guy. And so, Larry, if there's anybody that knows how to build a brand or build an identity, it's Larry, because he actually had to do that for himself and has quite a history podcasting. He's been doing that for many years and still has a podcast today, but really just became burned out with the corporate world and decided, you know what, I'm going to go chase my dreams instead. I think that's awesome. So I think what we're going to get into tonight's going to really be fun because we're going to get into some of his backstory and touch on that in the episode. And Larry, I kind of wanted to get in a little bit about how things have changed for you over the past few years. You're teaching workshops now, you're hosting speaking gigs and speaking engagements. Every time I talk to you, it seems like you're traveling somewhere, you're on the road. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw you post something on your Facebook page the other day. you've got speaking engagements coming up for every week, I think all the way up until Christmas through the holidays. So, dude,
Wow.
you are a very, very busy man.
Yeah, it's insane. It blew up this year, man, but it's amazing. It's like you were saying that, I took my side hustle and turned it into my main hustle. And I mean, if we go back, you were talking, and it's been 20 plus years. I was at the company that we worked for 21 years when I left. So, and I think we met probably about 6 months after I started working there. So we've known each other, a couple 22 years or so, something like that. But, during that time, I had several side hustles. There was a time, especially back in the early eBay days, when we were hustling all kinds of stuff on eBay. I started my own company back then. The swimming pool company had pristine pool and spa service back then. Didn't quite have the fortitude to step out of that corporate umbrella to do the pool thing full time. So I ended up selling that company. But man, I've always had the side hustle, and I fell in love with podcasting. I started podcasting back in 2014 and just fell in love with the medium, then got kind of embraced by the community and actually the business side of podcasting, and podcasting as an industry, not just as a hobby. And then eventually became, like you said, the red hat was an accident. You say I'm an expert in branding. It was an accidental expert is really, but I mean, the story there though is, and it's interesting because you don't usually hear the fact that a lot of these big brands and a lot of these influencers, they stumbled on the one thing that made them stand out. And prior to that, they tried time and time and time again to find a brand or an identity that would stick. And I went through several until the red hat, it just happened. And overnight, it literally changed things.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
that's crazy.
You're super busy. I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time. I know that if my schedule was that busy, I probably would have just said, "Hey, Kevin, go pound sand. I don't have time for it right now." So thanks for doing this. Just for anybody listening, I would like to, before we get too far into it, say that Jason and I typically follow a pattern with our podcast, and mostly it's focused around cybersecurity and cybersecurity technologies. Tonight's going to be a little bit different in that, we're going to be talking about AI, which can closely tie into cyber, but it's going to be mostly AI. So we had this opportunity to talk to Larry, who is a brand creator using AI technologies, and that's his forte. So I think this is going to be fun. We're changing the format a bit, more of a Q&A, and we'll see how this goes. So
cool.
Let's jump into it. Larry, I'd like to start out by asking this question here before we get into Jason's question. I know what you're going to ask, Jason, because I think we talked about it. Just a few minutes ago. But before we get into that, Larry, I've heard the story about the Red Hat, and I know it was an accident, and I think that's a really cool story. So before we get into the other questions, it'd be cool if you'd tell that story just real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the Cliff Notes version, or I think nowadays they're called Spark Notes. I learned that the other day. My co-host on my podcast, I think she's 28, and she said Spark Notes, and I was like, I don't have any clue. What is a Spark Note? And then I learned that. Yeah, for us old people, they were Cliff Notes. So I'll give that version. Yeah, so same thing, just a different brand, I guess. But I had been speaking on stage in the podcast space for several years, and back in November of 21, I was giving a talk in Tampa, Florida at the Amalie Arena, and I turned 51. We're recording this late August. I don't know when it's going to drop, but I turned 51 here in about a week. So even then, 2 years ago, I was still kind of an old middle-aged white dude that was trying to relate to a much younger, much more diverse audience. So what I did was I had bought a Supreme hat. Now, Supreme, it's just a brand. Everything they have is red, and then it says Supreme in bold white letters. I'm sure most of the people listening probably are familiar with the brand. So I wore that. I gave my talk. It was all good. I come off stage, and I've got a good friend of mine that we give each other grief every time we talk. We just make fun of each other, just kind of little guy talk, just poking and prodding. But he goes, "Hey, man, for real, though, why are you wearing that Supreme hat?" And I answered the question, and he goes, I think it's great because I'm a big guy. I'm about 6'3". Right now I'm rocking about 240. I'm loud. And he says that red hat it's like a beacon in the night. Everybody can see you from, all the way down the hallway in these massive arenas or these massive hotels that these events are held in. So I think it's great because it makes you stand out. But unless they're going to sponsor you, you probably shouldn't be wearing somebody else's branded merch. And it was the best lesson that I ever learned, because I went home right after that event, jumped on Amazon. I bought a $6 flat build red hat that's completely unbranded, threw it on, threw it about 15 degrees to the right because I got to have a little swag in the hat there. And that was it. And from that point forward, literally, it felt like overnight, I became the red hat guy. And everywhere I would go, they wouldn't necessarily know my name, but they knew that the red hat was associated with podcasting, was associated with brand building and content creation. And it got reinforced when 5 months later, I think it was 6 months later, I went to Bitcoin Miami. And, massive Bitcoin conference, 35,000 people in attendance over the span of about 3 days. And during the course of those 3 days, multiple people in this sea of people came up to me and went, "Oh, you're the podcast guy." People I didn't even know, I had never met. And at that point, I knew that I was onto something. I knew that the Red Hat, that was the brand. So I renamed my company. It's Red Hat Media now. And Red Hat became everything. And now today, the Red Hat guy, the branding has really allowed me to take that transition from not just being in the podcast space, but to really become a standout in the AI space as well. And it's giving me these opportunities because I've got a brand that people can recognize and reinforce. And then if I represent that brand accordingly, it opens up more and more doors.
Yeah, it's a great story. Unbranded or unbranded cap, the unbranded red cap.
Yeah.
Is it your podcast called Unbranded or?
No, you just take off the un. It's called Branded.
Branded. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it's kind of built around this story, right?
It's built around that story, but it's really built around finding your brand and helping people find their red hat or find what makes them stand out in and it doesn't matter what niche you're in. Somebody else is out there. It's overpopulated. Everybody's trying to be an entrepreneur these days, but the differentiating factor is, how do you stand out? And you have to be branded. Your company has to be branded. You have to have a personal brand, because even though my company is branded with the red hat, it's the personal brand that stands above and beyond just the company. Yeah. People look at me and they go, "This is what I'm getting when I go with the red hat. This is what I'm getting. I'm getting this level of service. I'm getting this level of dedication, this level of commitment to helping me achieve my goals, whatever they may be, however I can help this individual." But they know that's what they're going to get with the red hat. And that's where people make a lot of mistakes when it comes to building a brand. They think it's just the red hat, or they think it's just a logo, or whatever it may be. And it goes so far beyond that. It's everything that's under the brim of the red hat and everything that you represent and everything you bring to the table. And that's what my podcast, Branded, is about, with my co-host, Sarah Losi.
Yeah. Wow.
Nice.
That's good content, because you're right. People don't think about all of the other aspects that need to go into really being successful at something like this. And branding is a fundamental part to it, but there's so many other more parts to it that really make it the whole. So, before we go further into this, I just want to bring up this part. Our guest tonight is Larry Roberts. And when we go deeper into the story, Larry, I want to start by bringing up this one thing that we found on your website. It's a quote.
Uh-oh.
It's a quote. And the quote was, "Podcasting not only changed my life, it saved it. Now I owe it to the industry to give my clients everything I have." Tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Well, if we dial it all the way back to November 14th of 2013, I made a phone call to a mutual friend of mine and Kevin's, his name's Kenny, and I said, "Hey man, I need help," because I had been on a multi-week bender, and I was at that point where I believe I heard it, that a voice said, "Hey dude, either you're going to get help today or you're not going to see tomorrow." Because, for weeks, all I had was alcohol and some Special K breakfast drinks. And don't ever mix the two. They're horrendous together. But I was just trying to survive and kill myself simultaneously. But regardless of that fact, I reached out to my friend, and before I knew it, he and my wife, they swept in, and they whisked me off to rehab with the help of several other people, Kevin included. And I spent 7 weeks in rehab, got all straightened out there, came out and was sober, but was lost. I didn't know what the heck, and here we are. It's early 2014. Didn't know what to do with myself. I'd been an alcoholic for over a decade at this point. And like I said, at the end, really super, super hardcore. So yeah, I'm sober and lost. And another mutual friend, somebody that we used to work with, suggested that I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast. And I'm like, bro, I don't have time for podcasts. I'm over here playing World of Warcraft. That takes all my time as it is. I don't have time for 3 hours of Joe Rogan's nonsense. But he eventually talked me into it. And when I heard that first episode, it had 2 comedians on there, Tony Hinchcliffe and Joey Diaz. And I was blown away at the content, because I grew up in the 80s with the Sam Kinnisons and the Dice Clays and all these amazing comedians from that era. And these guys were telling similar jokes. I was like, oh my God, you can say this on a podcast? This is amazing. So I had to figure out what this podcast thing was all about and how to start one. And I went out and I bought absolutely the worst mic you can possibly buy for a podcast. It was a Yeti Snowball. Yeah. And they call it a snowball because it's white and it's literally a ball. And it's about the size of a softball. And I found myself a co-host and a local open mic comedian. His name was Jamie Gravy at the time. His name's Jamie Gravitt. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, man, I'm going to start a podcast. You want to do it with me? He's like, heck yeah, let's do it. So we took that Yeti Snowball and we gently cupped it in our hands like so. And we would speak into the microphone, and then we would gently pass that microphone to the other person. And we did this for about an hour and a half for this podcast, right? Not knowing. And we were sitting on an ottoman in my den in just the other room there. And it was so bad we couldn't even release it. It was the audio was horrible. We took the whole concept of freedom of speech a little too far, maybe. and even listening back, we're like, bro, we can't say this. We can't do this. So that was my first attempt at a podcast, but we got better and better and better, and eventually our show ended up doing pretty good. We took it to a live stage show here in Dallas and turned into a massive open mic for several years. Jamie has gone on to be a professional comedian. He's crushing it in the Dallas and the Austin comedy scene, which, Austin right now is the hotbed of all comedy here in the States. So Jamie's doing amazingly well. He's considerably younger than me, so he was able to keep up with that whole comic lifestyle. And he's a lot funnier than I am, too, if I really want to be honest. So it did what it did. But the content, too, as Kevin mentioned, it still got me in trouble, even though it was a podcast. My merch was showing up in the office, and even the name of our podcast was a bit of an innuendo. So I finally got that knock, knock, knock and said, hey, come on down to HR. Let's have a talk. And
it was. Go ahead, Larry. Tell it. What was the name? Please tell.
Okay, the name of the show.
I know this. I know that Jason does not.
and it's so funny because I was just speaking at Entrepreneurs Organization out in San Diego this past Friday, and they also knew that I had a comedy podcast. And I'm sitting here in front of 75 multi-deca millionaires, and they wanted to know the name of this podcast. And I was very hesitant to say it, but I said it. And the original show was called Accidentally the Whole Tip. So
and I knew that would get you, Jason.
That's the reaction we always got. I mean, the name was amazing, an amazing name for a show, and everybody always laughed when everybody saw the name of it. And I just knew we had something really, really great on our hands, but HR had other plans. So
they do, as they will from time to time.
When you wear that merch to the office, you get in trouble. I had to change gears, but I knew I still loved podcasting, and it had given me direction. It had given me a creative outlet. It had given me something to focus on other than just going, oh, I'm sober now. What am I going to do? So it literally saved me. It gave me a direction. It gave me something to work towards, something to work on. In 2017, I founded my business, which eventually evolved into Red Hat. So it did. Podcasting literally saved my life. And I'm a big believer in giving back to the community. In my former life, back in my 20s, I was a karate guy and I was a karate instructor. And I firmly believe that anything that I learned as a black belt, I now had the responsibility to train other students to get to that same level. And it's the same way in podcasting. I still feel like I'm obligated to help these independent creators do what they need to do to get their shows launched, to have their voice heard, to build their brand, to build their audience and their community. So that's what that phrase means. And I mean it so much that I co-promote one of the largest independent podcasting conferences in the world called PodFest, and it's all about the independent creator. We're all about helping that hobbyist find their audience. We're all about helping that small, independent, one-person shop. And you guys know how much work goes into making a podcast.
Yeah.
Not many people understand what goes into actually creating a quality show. And we're all about helping people find the most effective and efficient ways to create their shows so they can continue down that same path that I went down. And they can find their red hat and they can find their audience, and then they have opportunities to have conversations like this.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, I can definitely tell you're passionate about it for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And so, as you've kind of emerged into your niche, and you've taken your conversations, onto new heights, technology has also evolved and has created opportunities for you. And,
sure.
We're talking about AI being a big thing anymore. It seems like now that seems to be a hot topic for you in conversations that you're having. And so the question I would have would be two things. How do you see yourself falling into this AI conversation as kind of the niche area that you get to speak to? And two, what can you offer our listeners to think in thinking about when you're having these conversations, why AI is so important to, the conversations you're getting?
Man, that's a very multifaceted question. How did I fall into it? As a creator, and I'll go back to kind of what I was saying a second ago, creating a podcast is very, very difficult. So because there's so much work involved, the workload is much heavier than many people realize. And when I started seeing these generative AI platforms come out on the forefront that allowed me to streamline my processes. One of my keynote talks that I was giving before AI hit the scene late last year was workflows, how to streamline your podcast creation workflow. So when I saw these tools coming online and being made more and more available to us, this was an opportunity to streamline everything we were doing. So, and there was kind of also that perfect storm that happened as well. ChatGPT got released in November. I turned around, gave a talk in January. So it was a massive keynote talk. There was probably 500 people in the room. So the timing was there, which was right. There were a lot of other people in that audience that came up to me after. They were in a variety of different industries that wanted me to speak to their industries as well. And it just built from there. So it's been very advantageous from that perspective. But I think a lot of it, too, is that I had the opportunity to understand the potential of what's going on here because of my background. I have a business intelligence background to a certain degree. That's another one of the reasons I said, hey, this podcasting stuff, this is kind of cool, because I knew how to podcast, but that BI stuff, we had some real crazy data scientists coming on board that were doing things with the business intelligence that I couldn't even fathom, and they weren't about to be bothered to show me. So I was like, I probably need to get out of here before they show me the door. But that still put me in a position to understand the potential that these tools were bringing to the forefront. So if I hadn't had that understanding, I'm not sure I would have jumped on as quickly as I did. I'm not sure I would have been immersed in it at the level that I was and became I considered myself even back in January a power user of ChatGPT at the time, because I took the time to figure out exactly how to prompt engineer. I was talking about prompt engineering in January, and people had never even heard that term. Most people, other than those that are outside the industry, most had never even heard that term. So I think it was just a combination of those things that allowed me to realize its potential and try to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you obviously have embraced AI, and that's become a huge part of what you do now. And that you kind of become not only the Red Hat guy, but you're the Red Hat AI guy. And
yeah.
I know a lot of your talks that are coming up and some of your keynote talks are around that specifically. But I guess my question back to you on that would be your whole purpose of creating Red Hat and the branded podcast and everything is to help creators to promote their own brand and build their own brand identity. And if you're starting up new in a podcast, and we may have people listening that are thinking, hey, I might want to start a podcast too. This goes beyond podcasting. It can go into social media and everything else, building the brand and everything. But when you think about stacking AI with the idea of building a brand, what advice would you give to people that are just getting started and what they can do to use AI for that?
Yeah, a lot of it comes around understanding the tool itself. Understand what you're trying to achieve and the steps you need to take in order to achieve it. I like to refer to, and I typically refer to ChatGPT because that's the tool that most people are using. Yes, there are a ton of other ones out there. We've got Bard, we've got Bing, we've got Claude, and I love Claude. I think Claude is amazing for doing creative type work. There's a couple of other platforms that I love as well. But it's understanding what your goals are and then understanding what tools that are out there, because there's so many. There's literally hundreds, if not thousands of tools out there. What tools can help you accomplish those goals? So we have to keep in mind that regardless of what tool it is that we're using, let's just go back to ChatGPT for a second. I like to refer to ChatGPT as a brilliant toddler. Okay. And one of the biggest things that I hear from people is, I use ChatGPT and the results are garbage. It's just so generic. It's so, it doesn't do anything for me. Well, that's because we have to tell it exactly what we want. We have to provide context. We have to provide tonality. We have to provide how do we want the tool to respond? Do we want long, drawn-out responses? Do we want short, concise responses? Do we want it to read at the level of maybe a fifth grader? Do we want it to read like a college exam paper? Do we want it to read like a textbook? How do we want the tools that we're using to respond? And that's where a lot of people get lost and don't understand how to build their brand using these tools, because they don't understand how to set the expectations for the tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I saw Jason smile when you said brilliant toddler. I know he's going to reuse that term. He lives in AI now, too, so he's going to reuse that.
Oh, I am for sure going to reuse that term. That's a good one. But that's a good point, right? I mean, the average user, I think you said earlier today, the report, there was a report that was going out that said something like, 14% of the general population have actually really used ChatGPT, right?
Only 56% have even heard of it.
Yeah.
56%. We're so absorbed by it and we're so lost in it that we just assume everybody's using it. Everybody knows how. Because I feel that way when I give these talks. I'm like, man, this thing's been out for a year now. Everybody already. No, they don't.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Right. It's so hard to believe that it's not more mainstream than that already. Because that's all I hear about. That's all we hear.
Yeah.
But the point that Larry was making too, I use that point often. I'm like, if you know what's behind the scenes on in using these engines, there are so many dials you can touch and move and modify and tweak to get the output that you want. And the common, easy one that I share with everyone is just, remove the fact that you have to have some understanding of prompt engineering, of how do you tell it what you want to get out of it? How do you, prime it or guide it to giving you what you want to get out of it? There is a temperature setting that you can set. And that temperature setting is very, very, very important, because that's telling the engine to either be very logical on this end or very creative on this end. And if you think about that on a sliding scale, you can move that anywhere up and down that sliding scale to modify the results of what you're getting. So your point is very valid, right? If you don't know this as a user, then your answer would be, I tried it, but I didn't really get anything good out of it. That's because there's so many other dials that you could be manipulating to modify it to get it the way you want it, to get value.
Creative can get you in a lot of trouble sometimes.
Right.
Especially if you crank it all the way up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's where filters
come in. Those hallucinations kick in.
Yeah, those hallucinations. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So, Kevin, I think right now will probably be a good point for us to take a break and come back and go into our next session.
Yeah. We got some fun stuff coming up and some questions that are going to get more interesting. So we'll do that. We'll come right back. AI has been around for decades. The foundations of AI research stretch back to the 1950s. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 at an academic conference. AI algorithms are often modeled after the human brain. Neural networks are inspired by the biological neurons and processes in our brains. AI can discover things humans missed. AI exploration has led to advances in discoveries in fields like physics, biology, and material science. AI systems can develop their own language. When Facebook AI bots negotiated with each other, they deviated from human language and ultimately created their own shorthand communications.
Welcome back, everyone. And so Kevin and I are here tonight with Larry Roberts, and we're going to dive a little deeper into the second segment, trying to go more around not just branding, but more around this conversation of AI. But to start off with, I've got a really key question for you, Larry. You know, our podcast is centered around cybersecurity topics, and Kevin and I live in that world quite a bit. What are you hearing about AI that's changing the game related to cybersecurity?
I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing is from a penetration testing perspective. It's allowing small to mid-sized businesses to really use AI to run penetration testing on a regular basis, because it can be a really expensive endeavor. And some of these platforms that have come out that allow you to schedule it and use AI to do your testing for you, it's a much more affordable, but yet still very, very effective solution to a really, really challenging problem. So that's where I'm hearing a lot of it. But in some of the more common ways too. I mean, phishing scams, using AI to detect phishing scams within your email, using it for password generation. I mean, at the very elementary level, you use AI to test passwords, create new passwords. So very superficial things like that. But again, with some of the more complex things like the penetration testing, it's proving to be a very, very beneficial asset.
Yeah. An interesting part to that story, I heard a story today where the person who was talking was saying that, you know, these tools have gotten much, much better in being able to detect text that has been generated by AI to be used in phishing campaigns or, you know, things to that effect. And we're having this conversation. I was sharing with him. I'm like, yeah, that only goes so far, because my wife also is doing a lot of talks around AI within higher education. She's a professor at Iowa State, and in higher education, as you can imagine, this is a major topic of discussion, because every student that's anywhere kind of aware of how they're going to get ahead on the system is using ChatGPT to help them with their work, right? And so everyone is just dumbfounded on, how do we control this? We've got to find a way to keep these students in check so that they're not just having AI write their papers for them. You know, back when we were growing up, that having someone write your paper for you, that was called cheating. Now we can have AI do it, and we might get away with it. So maybe. So she did an interesting test with it. She used a couple of different tools to do this, but the thing to know about her is she's very perfectionistic in her writing. So that's the first thing, right? And so she took something she wrote, and she took something that AI generated. She ran it through the tool. It actually said what she wrote was 100% generated by AI, and what AI had generated was like 98% generated by AI. Possible, right?
Interesting.
And she's like, what? So then she went and she had one of my sons do the same thing. Now, the thing you know about my son, this particular son, is he's very much like her, except he's not academic, right? He's not academically inclined, but he's very perfectionistic. In fact, he's a Marine, and who's now trying to get into a Navy SEAL contract, if that tells you something. Yeah. He wrote a paper, and she submitted that. It also said that it was 100% generated by AI. So the moral of the story is, the moral of the story is that what we deduced from this experiment was, if you are a very good writer, I mean, technically good writer, it can be very hard for AI to determine if it was generated or these tools to determine if it was generated by AI or not. Because what AI is doing is adding extra words, making it a little bit more full in the messages that it creates
super
for you.
verbose in its vocabulary and very academic, as you were referring to, in its vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, because I work with the Texas State Board of Education on how AI is impacting education and actually planning curriculum for some of the upcoming school years at various levels of education here in the state. And this is a concern across the board. Not just at the higher education level, but we're talking middle school, even, all the way up through high school and into the graduate studies. And we're seeing it on both sides, though, because we're seeing teachers use it to write their entire lesson plans. We're seeing teachers use it to grade papers, because even now, some of the platforms they're very capable of doing multiple choice, true, false, those types of questions. But they're even getting to the point now where they're able to grade essay questions and see if they're relevant. So there's definitely that challenge of understanding, going back to the emails, whether or not this was written by an AI bot of some sort, or if it was written by somebody, that is just a well versed at technical writing. So it's difficult for us to, because see, and here's the thing too, because I work with a lot of content creators, a lot of writers, and a lot of IP attorneys have their opinion on how this is going to go and how we can leverage AI to write books and write papers and write anything we want to write. I mean, it makes everybody an expert writer. But we have to be careful, because when we start creating these, if we're writing a novel or writing a book and we try to copyright it, right now you can't. So just the fact that the patent office and the trade commission says, no, we're not going to give patents or trademarks on any of this that is strictly AI work, that tells you that this isn't a viable option when moving forward, at least not right now.
Yeah.
Because as it sits, there has to be some human intervention for a patent or a trademark to be issued.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
It's there and it's scary, but who knows,
Right.
And I often wonder, and we can talk about it offline, but I'm curious as to what tools your wife used as well.
Yeah. Well, I think when I refer to it all, I refer to it from a standpoint of, and I've heard this referred to it this way often, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. It's the changing point synonymous to when calculators were introduced in school, right? Calculators were introduced in school. Everybody was in an uproar. Oh, you're not going to learn how to do math that way. We're not allowing calculators in this class. You know how many classes I went to, I could not use a calculator? All the way through high school. I get out of high school and I have my own, and I go to college and I have my own kids. My kids go to school. Oh yeah, make sure you bring your calculator. I'm like, what is that? They didn't allow it when I was doing it. Why are they allowed to use it now? It took that long for society to be more accepting of using calculators to do this unit of work. And I do think that this has a long tail to it. And eventually, like everything, you change the way you think and use the technology, and then things become more accepting. By it becoming more accepting, it frees your mind to come up with new, more innovative ideas. And then the technology really starts to take off. So,
yeah, I don't think we're going to have that long of an adoption plan for AI, though. As long as it took everybody to adopt calculators, I think we're going to be forced to adopt AI a lot faster than that.
Oh, we're definitely going to be forced to.
We're already on the on ramp, and this is the Autobahn, baby. We're all doing 110, and I think it's going to move so quick that regulation's going to be left behind, and it's going to be kind of the Wild West for a while until we can get our arms around, or until a few people die. It's like anything else, seat belts and other things that need regulation. I'm just saying, you hear the horror stories when you start talking about artificial general intelligence. We did a whole episode on that, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's interesting how fast it's all moving. But taking a couple steps back to cybersecurity, one of the things that we're starting to see in our world is, 5 years ago, these were being labeled as next generation solutions or software that's more intelligent than the previous version. What used to be antivirus and malware scanning is now next generation EDR, and a lot of these applications are leveraging machine learning, intelligence, and AI, and not necessarily learning language models, but that type of intelligence to trigger alerts and to trigger, letting your admins know when certain conditions are met. So you're already seeing a lot of this built into the code of certain software applications. You see it in email filtering and things like that as well. So I think AI has kind of been around in cyber for quite a while, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that grows over the next, probably even over the course of the next year or two with AI.
Well,
with,
I think it's been out there. I think it's been involved for a much longer period of time than most of us even take into consideration.
Yeah.
Because AI has been around a lot longer than we even take into consideration.
Right.
It was, the term was coined in 1956.
Yeah.
So it's been around for decades. So this isn't something new. We definitely went through an AI winter for several decades where they lost funding and they weren't able to do the research to make any kind of real significant progress until our military woke up and went, oh, this seems like it could be kind of cool. And so suddenly funding is available and now discoveries are being made. And now we're in this deep learning phase of AI. So just because we're now calling it AI doesn't mean that these tools, doesn't mean that these tools weren't already leveraging AI to a certain degree in their initial development. So it's just that, that's the buzzword we're using now when they were using algorithms to determine most of this in the first place. And if you look back in the early days of AI, they were just using straight algorithms to have machines mimic human behavior. That was artificial intelligence. So a lot of these tools have been using that for years and years and years. We're just now calling it AI.
And you think about the emergence of faster GPUs over the years to enable us to do more and to do faster calculations than we have been able to do in the past. There's so many things that are enabling us to get to the point where we're today, where now we have a vision. We can see, hey, what we're doing today, it's possible for us to go 10x in even the next year, right? There's leaps and bounds within the year because of how fast we know we can move this technology. That's where it becomes interesting, because even when you look at what we're doing in cybersecurity, I think, Kevin, we're going to see this competing event happening where tools will be able to predict and analyze what hackers are doing to a system eventually faster than hackers are able to create unique ways to try to get into these systems. So you're going to see this plateau effect where these tools are going to be super effective at stopping a lot of cybersecurity attacks. And we're going to be like, oh my gosh, look at what AI is doing for us. These tools are so great. And then hackers are going to figure out some unique ways that these tools aren't working. Yeah. And then it's going to fall back down again. And we're going to go through this ebb and flow cycle.
Well, it's like anything else. It's another tool in the tool set of the blue teamers, but it's also another tool set in the belt of the red teamers and the hackers. So you, like you said, it's going to go back and forth. There will be a time when it tilts in the favor of the offensive side, but it won't last. Just like anything else, they're going to figure out, oh, here's how we can leverage this technology for what we want to do with it. And then it's just all over again.
They'll just hack the engine, right? Poison the engine, make it do what it wants to do.
and everybody's
screwed. Oh,
well, poison your data and ruin your AI. So, all right, guys, we kind of went off the rails a little bit there, but that was fun. I want us to take a couple steps back and get back on track with Larry's change of career. And I got a question, Larry, that I wanted to ask you about when you made this change, when you decided, okay, I'm diving out of the corporate world and I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah.
What thing in your new career has happened that you didn't expect?
I didn't expect it to be as difficult because I didn't have the understanding of the industry that I thought I had. And my entire approach to business development failed miserably right out of the gate. If you recall, I left in January 4th of 2021 was my last day in the office. Yeah. And I spent the next 8 months thinking I had this thing figured out, but my bank account was letting me know that I did not. And then,
As it will.
Then long about August, the wife, she also let me know that it wasn't quite working out. So she's like, hey, bro.
As they will.
She's like, this thing isn't going the way you said it was going to go. What are we going to do? So I had to reevaluate the entire idea I had behind business development and gaining clients and working with clients. So that was the biggest reality check, was that what I thought was going to work and how I thought this thing was going to play out wasn't even remotely close to how it ended up working. But at the same time, and I want to dial this back for people that are thinking of potentially going out there and fulfilling their entrepreneurial dreams. We planned for me to make this transition, not transaction, but we planned for it. I sold my vehicle. We paid off our second vehicle. We paid off all of our credit cards. We were almost debt-free outside of our mortgage. We changed our lifestyle up to where we knew that worst case scenario, her salary could still fulfill all of our needs. And then I had to, on my end, let her know that, hey, I'm not just going to sit here and freeload on you, but I have this plan. So it was all planned. It was all structured. We literally ran for the last 2 years on one car up until about 6 weeks ago, when we finally bought another second car for the first time in 2 years. So while those 8 months sucked, they didn't work the way that I thought they were going to work. Had we not taken those initial steps to make sure that I had a fallback, that we had our bases covered, it would have been much, much more detrimental. So that's absolutely critical. And that's the side of the story that most people never get, because all you hear is about, oh, Gary Vee's crushing it. He's doing this. He's the best. But you never hear how he, was eating ramen noodles and drinking tap water for 15 years. So you don't hear that side of the story.
Yeah.
And that's the story that I like to tell, because I like people to know, yeah, you can do this. And I did it in my late 40s. Which was ridiculous too. Why would I give up that cush job? It was very cush for Larry, and with a decent salary, with great benefits, and I'd been there 20 plus years. Why would I leave that to go do this? Well, because I loathed being there. I hated myself being there. I got up to 326 pounds in that environment because I hated every day that I woke up. Sundays especially. And I'm doing this sober. So I hated it even more because I didn't even have an escape. I just knew it was coming. And I could not stand the fact that I had to go back there Now, this isn't to say that the company was a horrible company. We haven't mentioned the name. We're not going to. The company itself took great care of me. The management there took they stuck with me through all my alcoholic nonsense. They were still there for me after the fact. They protected me while I was in rehab. They took tremendous care of me, and I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah.
But the environment that I had to walk into every day, the structure had changed so much since day one back in the late 90s, which was a whole different era, right?
Yeah.
To the time that I was still there in 2021. It wasn't even the same thing. It wasn't the same company. It wasn't the same environment. It didn't have the same feel. And it was very heavy on me.
Yeah.
And two, in my head, and I probably put a lot of weight, and maybe this is a perspective for somebody listening, is, I knew I did a lot of career damage, not just physical damage with the alcoholism. I'm in this position. I'm going nowhere. I have a job and I have a really nice salary. And I can buy any toy I want. I can do whatever I want, but I know I'm going nowhere. And I sit there and I go, okay, I have another 20 years of going nowhere while everything around me is growing.
Or
you
do what you
I go,
did.
hey, let's go do what I do. And that's what I did. So, but again, I planned it. But the biggest thing that took me by surprise was, even with the planning, it's not always going to go the way you plan.
Yeah. Well, that's a good message too.
Great advice.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot of people struggle in life with knowing where they want to be in the moment that they are in. As you said, 20 years ago, whatever, in the 90s, it was great. Things change, you change, the world around you changes. It's okay to get to the point where you're feeling like, this doesn't feel good anymore. I need to do something different. But to your point, then plan for what that difference is going to be for you.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that stands out to me is, in your opinion, would you say is the most important personality trait or strength that someone would need to work in your industry and be successful in a job that you're doing?
I think just communication, primarily verbally. You got to be able to talk. You're podcasters, right? You got to be able to talk. If you're a speaker, you got to be able to speak. But the communication aspect, not just written, not just verbally, but written, is absolutely critical as well. And honestly, I got everything in my life because I was a good communicator. Okay, I have 0 college. Okay, I say 0. I have 6 credit hours, so 0. Three of those hours is Pascal programming. Okay, that means absolutely nothing. So those are 0. The other 3 are speech. So from the local community college. But so that helped. The speech helped because that's gotten me everything in life. I came out of high school, sold cars. Then I taught karate for years and years and years. Then I was a corporate trainer for TI. We made calculators. And then that allowed me to go to the other company that I ended up working and meeting Kevin at. And it was all because I was a great communicator. And that's what allows me to be as successful as I am today doing what I do, because I'm a good communicator. So that would be the number one trait that I would recommend.
I can vouch for Larry on that, because the first time I ever met Larry, he was actually training a room full of people. And that's what he had gotten hired on to do before he ever even got transferred into IT. Larry was already a trainer and a communicator. And I know that when you and Jamie broke off and did your podcasting thing and you were starting to get into you even considered comedy, but you guys both got really good at getting in front of an audience and speaking. And I know you even took certain workshops on how to do that and how to do it well and how to maintain the attention of the room and all that good stuff. And all of that stuff comes into play in what you're doing today. So I think you kind of, it was just a perfect storm of all these talents that you already had, and then knowing what to go chase to kind of hone in your craft. And obviously it works out for you. It's been working out well for you. I mean,
it's doing okay.
You're lined up for speaking gigs until Christmas. So I think you're doing something right.
But I mean, I took Toastmasters. I was a member of Toastmasters at, I think, 19 years old was the first time I ever joined Toastmasters. Yeah. Again, 3 credit hours, speech. I took voiceover, advanced voiceover acting. I did voice acting before I got into podcasting. Again, comedy. I took comedy courses. Anything that allowed me to get on a stage in front of a microphone and learn how to use my voice, I have invested time, energy, and money into doing that. So that's why I'm going to say again that I just think that communication is absolutely the critical component to doing what I'm doing today.
So I'll say this plays right perfectly into the question I was going to ask you next, which is what is one piece of advice you'd give anybody else that's thinking about branching out and trying to do their own thing?
Yeah, I'm sure it's this way in every industry, but especially if you're in a technical industry, you have to have a mindset of continuing education. You have to stay on top of things, especially here we're talking about AI, and we know everything in the AI world changes almost daily. There's new tools, there's new techniques, there's new updates to existing platforms. There's constantly things that are going on that you have to stay on top of. And it doesn't matter what your niche is or what your market is. Those types of changes are constantly happening as well. I mean, I literally sleep on the couch because I got a bad back. So the couch is the only place I can sleep. It's not because my wife won't let me, but I sleep on the couch. So I go to sleep every night watching YouTube videos on the latest, greatest news of AI. I wake up in the morning. I wake up every day. I don't know why. It's because I'm old. I wake up at 3 a.m. and I'm up for a couple of hours. And I will sit there and, okay, this is bad for my health, but I'll pop a Monster. And then I'll watch a couple of YouTube videos till I fall back to sleep. I don't know
why. Larry's the only person I know on earth that can double fist Monsters and turn around and pass out. This dude can take a nap hopped up on caffeine. I don't get it, man. It's crazy.
100%, but that's my ritual. But I use those times to consume content to keep me on top of the industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mentality, and that's not the only time that I'm studying and researching, but that's part of, it's my daily routine. Literally, it's my daily routine. is I'm constantly learning something. And I think we have to be in that state regardless of what our industry is, regardless of our niche. You have to have that mindset that I have to continually do research. I continually have to stay on top of exactly what's going on in my industry.
Yeah.
We say this all the time, Jason, and I say it all the time. If we're not staying up to speed on technology and cybersecurity, we're screwed. Literally screwed.
Yeah. Technology is going to change on you. And if you get complacent, you might as well just say, hey, you know what? You're going to be a nobody, because you can't you can't stay actively in the field without actively learning. Those two have to go together, right? Yeah, that's a great advice. And I like how you put that together. That shows how you're utilizing even the small parts of your time to consume knowledge. 3 a.m. is a little much, but 3 a.m. whatever.
That's just how my body works. That's just, so I take advantage of the time. I'm going to be up anyways. I might as well be up, and I might as well, nobody's up. The dogs are asleep. Everybody's chilling. It's quiet. I can actually listen to the content, take it in, and it just works. It just works.
I totally don't disagree with what you're doing. I just maybe don't think you need the monster at 3 a.m. Wait till about 7 a.m.
Be up all day if I don't drink the monster.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, man. So I would ask this one. I was like, what's one thing about your job or what you're doing that almost no one agrees with you about?
I think if we just go straight to the podcast industry, it's what the definition of a podcast is. Traditionally speaking, a podcast has to be hosted and it has to have an RSS feed. And I'm sure everybody listening knows what an RSS feed. It's really just a hyperlink to a web page that has all the metadata to your podcast. And that's how it's distributed to all the different platforms and players that are out there. Traditionally, that's what a podcast is defined as. I personally believe it's content. I don't care. If you go to YouTube, they have an entire podcast section on YouTube now. They're not hosted by RSS feeds. They're not distributed using RSS feeds. But guess what? They're still podcasts. But the old schoolers, the guys that have been podcasting since 2003, when podcasting was created, most say 2004, but there was a podcast in 2003 that really led the way. But all those guys that are still around, they hate the fact that video is a podcast. So that's the one thing that gets me in the most trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
interesting enough, Kevin and I
love the fact that video is part of the podcast because it makes it more interesting. It makes it more interesting.
Yes, you have to have video. You cannot do a podcast today if you don't have video.
Yeah,
Audio only podcasts, and this will get me in trouble too. If anybody's listening, they're dying. They're gone.
Don't worry. It's late. Nobody's listening.
Well, one of the interesting things that Kevin and I are looking at along those same lines is when you're doing video, it's also important to be able to differentiate yourself in how you're doing video. And so one of the things Kevin and I started playing around with was doing YouTube shorts. And ironically, we've had interesting success with this, but we did 3 different shorts on some random things. And of those 3, 2 of them were nothing, right? Mediocre, had a few hits here and there. But
50 views.
One of them blew up, had 2,100 views.
Nice.
Overnight too.
Within a few hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It's like, what was so special about that one?
So the content that we were posting in that short is what differentiated it from everything else. And there is art behind creating a short over creating a full podcast. So we're still working on that.
Yeah. Yeah,
sure.
We're still trying to figure that one out.
I think I can help you out there. And not that I do tens of thousands, but my reels and my shorts tend to do fairly well. But the first one that I ever did that did really well was not too long ago, as a matter of fact, before I started figuring out that the edits made all the difference in the world. I did one with Alex Hormozy. So I did a stitch with Alex. And I don't know if you know who Alex Hormozy is, but he's a bajillionaire and a marketer. And he's also pretty easy on the eyes. Okay. And he was talking about wearing a hat, and guys with beards, they have it easier, especially if they're ugly guys, because the beard leaves a lot to imagination. So I stitched myself on top of the video and just kind of worked through it as he was saying, an ugly guy, the beard, the hat. And, dude, it got like 6,000 plays. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice. Okay, so I do stupid content that has no value whatsoever other than to self-deprecate myself. It does really, really well. But when I do my real content, it sucks. But no, I that was an eye opener. But it really shows that if you, with some small tweaks, you can make tremendous strides with your shorts and your reels.
Yeah. We got to figure out that short form content creation and start leveraging it more, because there's definitely something to be said for that. And according to what I'm reading, YouTube loves it in their algorithms, so it's getting a lot more play than the long form content stuff. So we're working on it. Figured out.
Shorts are crushing it right now, and Facebook Reels are crushing it. Not Instagram. Facebook Reels are crushing it. So if you want some attention on a higher level, definitely give Facebook Reels a try right now, because you'll be really, really surprised at the results.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you hear that, content creators. You hear it out there. This is from a guy that helps people promote their brands. It's coming from him, so I would take that to heart. So Larry, share with the listeners what your favorite productivity hack is for what you do. I think that could help other people as well.
GPT.
Yeah, GPT.
He didn't even hesitate. This is what it is.
It's almost like he had that answer prepared, or like maybe he's heard that question before. What the heck?
It just is, dude. It just is. I mean, it could literally, from a content creation perspective, it could literally do everything. Whether it's writing scripts. And guys, I got to tell you, when you were prepping me for this episode, and Kevin, you sent one script and it was a 4-page questionnaire. I'm like, God, I don't have time to even answer these questions, but I did for you, because we go way back.
I'm special.
You guys, then you turned around after I spent 5 hours maybe answering these questions. You sent a revised script, a full script.
You know why? I'm a perfectionist, Larry.
I couldn't figure out why for my life. I even looked over at my wife, Trace. I go, dude, I cannot imagine poor Jason having to do this every episode. This is insane. This is crazy. But I commend you for it. That's great.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT could help streamline this process. ChatGPT can help you transcribe your podcast. ChatGPT can help you create content from your transcriptions. It can create episode titles. It can create SEO-rich blog posts. It can do literally everything you need to do from a creative writing and generative writing perspective. So it's amazing. And especially
okay.
Yeah.
Time out.
What happened?
So
are we running out of time?
No. I just want to be clear. So are we saying ChatGPT?
We're saying ChatGPT, and maybe with a little, I'll do a little Salt Bay for Claude in here. I'll sprinkle a little Claude on top from time to time.
Okay. Now you got me curious about Claude. I'm gonna have to go check that one out.
Yeah, man, it's amazing.
That's funny.
All right,
well, look, guys, we're getting to the end of this segment, and we should probably take another break and then come back for our last segment and wrap things up.
Yeah, we'll do some quick hits. This will be the fun part. All right.
Yeah.
Malware detection. AI can analyze files and network activity to identify new malware that might evade traditional signature-based detection. Machine learning models can be trained on datasets of malicious and benign files. Insider threat monitoring. By analyzing patterns of user behavior, AI can spot anomalies that could indicate insider attacks. Things like unauthorized access attempts and abnormal data transfers can be flagged. Automated threat intelligence. AI tools can rapidly gather, analyze, and interpret threat data from multiple sources to provide actionable intelligence about emerging risks. Security operations automation. Repetitive security tasks like monitoring alerts and investigating issues can be automated using AI. This allows human analysts to focus on higher-level tasks. User and entity behavior analytics. By building a historical baseline for each user and device, AI can determine if their current actions vary suspiciously. Intelligent deception technology. AI can automate setting up deception environments involving fake systems, data, and credentials to attract attackers. This enables threat discovery. All right, we are back from our break, and we're going to jump into some quick hit type questions. We're going to get a little more creative with some stuff here and kind of get away from the professional world, and we're just going to pick your brain, Larry, on some fun stuff here. So I know a lot. We've probably talked movies and movie lines and movie quotes for years and years and years. So I kind of think I know what you might answer on this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So first, this is a two-part question. I want to know, what is Larry's 3 favorite movie recommendations? And then after that, what are your 3 favorite podcasts?
Now I feel pressured because I didn't pick that movie, but I will say that movie because I know what you're thinking, Kevin, and it's Sling Blade. Sling Blade.
please do it. Please do Carl from Sling Blade. You've got to do that.
I haven't done Carl in years, probably since the last time I was at your house, and it's been a minute.
But you do him better than anybody, so please do Carl.
I would have said Sling Blade if I knew he was going to do this. I don't even know that I can. This is on the spot type stuff. But
Jason, check this out. This is amazing.
No, it's not amazing. I can't do it.
No, you can't. Oh man, that's greatness. Please keep going.
You're like, it's Tony Kevin. You're like,
oh, this is the best. I just love Larry because he can do Carl. So I was like, I don't reckon I got no reason to kill nobody.
Oh my God.
Y'all got any of that AI in there? You got some AI in there we can use? So that's the best. That's the best. I have never done an AI against Carl, so it was really lame. But
I guarantee you, in Larry's career, this is a first. Sling Blade on AI.
That was I might have to, I'm doing a talk in the morning to a Rotary Club here in Dallas. I might have to throw that one out there and see how that works. So
that would be amazing.
But honestly, the movies that I chose, man, Wolf of Wall Street's one of my favorites. I love that movie just because it shows that money corrupts, but it also demonstrates the effectiveness of proper communication. Jordan Belfort, the real Wolf of Wall Street, he is an amazing communicator. Not real good at taxes, but he's really good at communicating and selling. And, those are 2 critical components for any entrepreneur. So I love that, but it's also a bit of a checks and balances because it shows that, money corrupts. And I think there's some lessons there. Plus, Barbie, she's pretty amazing too. So it's just fun to see her.
Yeah.
But the other one I chose was Jerry Maguire. Again, another great communication movie. He's a sports agent. It's been a while since you've probably seen Jerry Maguire. Some people listening may have never seen it, but it's a Tom Cruise movie. It's also an entrepreneur's movie because he works for a big corporate sports agency. And he doesn't like their corporate values and how the anonymity of everybody working there. You're just a number. And he felt he was more than a number. So he stepped out, he did his own thing, and became a very, very successful sports agent. So that's a very inspirational and fun movie that's right in line with everything that I strive to do. And then I threw in, every once in a while, you got to have a Western. And you're probably thinking I'm going to say Tombstone, but no, I'm going to say Open Range here. I love Open Range. Robert Duvall is just amazing in really any Western that he's ever been in. And that's just a fun one. So Robert Duvall and Kevin Costner are in that one, and it's a great one. So those are my 3 movie picks.
Okay. Podcasts. Quick hits and podcasts.
Yeah, I first and foremost Jocko podcast. I love everything about Jocko. I love Jocko's approach to leadership and management. I mean, I have his book here that Extreme Ownership. It sits by my side, literally on my desk. It's right here to my left each and every day. And when I start to get out of line, I look over at that. And I realize when I'm blaming others for what's going on in my life, that really it's all right here. It's all right back on me. So Extreme Ownership, very, very good book. And Jocko's podcast is just amazing. So I highly recommend that one. Smartless. I love Smartless. This is one of the most fun podcasts that I've ever listened to. And I didn't listen to it until I saw it on HBO Max. It's a 6-part series on HBO Max. And it's behind the scenes of Smartless. And it's got not Jason Sudeikis. It's got Jason Bateman. Are you taking notes, Kevin? Is that what you're doing?
Wrote that down so I can look it up.
Contract. You made me nervous. Yeah, but SmartList is great, man. Will Arnett, who plays Jack from Will and Grace? What's his name?
Oh gosh.
Right, but anyways, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
From Will and Grace. Yeah. It's those three: Jason Bateman, Just Jack, and Will Arnett, and they are amazing. They have celebrity guests, and it's just a lot of fun. And again, highly recommend if you have HBO Max, watch the 6-part series where it's behind the scenes of the show. Unbelievable. So
cool.
A lot of fun there. And then last but not least, the Gary Vee audio experience. I know Gary Vee is a little played out these days, but man, I still just love him. His practical application of marketing and his just grassroots approach to doing everything that he does, and really just the way that he presents it. You know, he talks kind of the way I talk. And if we want to go back to ChatGPT for a second, I actually have, and what I use for most of my content creation is I've trained a chat to have the combined voice, and even the chat is named Gary, Alex, Grant. So I trained a combined voice of Gary Vaynerchuk, Alex Hormozy, and Grant Cardone. So when I go into ChatGPT, I get responses back in the combined voice of these three creators. So nice. I love Gary. I love what he does. And my content, typically in the way I speak, sounds very, very similar. So I love the Gary Vee audio experience as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've created Gag AI. Cool. Now we know.
Yeah, Gag AI. That I did not think of it that way, Kevin, but thanks.
Yeah.
Well, look,
Larry, you can patent that.
Larry, I'm going to come at you with something different.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do some quick hit questions.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a couple of options out there. You pick the best of the two options that I throw out to you, and I'm just going to keep rolling through it.
Oh, I love it.
And then I'm going to pass it off to Kevin, and Kevin's going to have an opportunity to do the same thing.
It's kind of like ready to go. I got mine ready to go.
Kind of like putting you in the hot seat. All right.
Let's bring it.
All right. So here we go. All right. Would you prefer animals or people?
Animals.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Flying or turning invisible?
Ooh, invisible.
Talking pets or talking babies?
Pets.
How about beach or pool?
Pool.
Pizza or tacos?
Oh, golly, man. Probably tacos.
Oh, tacos. Yeah. How about toilet paper, over or under?
Oh, dude, straight up over. Yeah, it's got to be over. Yeah.
You thought I was good. You thought I was going to say toilet paper use or do not.
Is it paper or shell? What do we use here? I don't know.
Yeah. If you're an underroller, you're a communist. That's as simple as that.
Introvert or extrovert?
Oh, extra.
One more. Let's try test the waters or dive in the deep end.
Dude, regrettably, it's dive in the deep end.
That's what this whole episode's been about so far.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, Kevin, what do you got?
All right, I got some for you. Lose sleep or skip a meal?
Probably skip a meal these days.
All right. You thought way too long on that, Larry. These are quick hits.
I love both, but man, I'm tired. So I'm tired all the time.
I already know this one too. Hot coffee or iced coffee?
Iced coffee.
Monster.
Yeah, I just stayed in the coffee realm, but it's got to be cold, so I went to iced coffee.
Yeah, I figured it would be the cold one. Okay, zombies or vampires?
Vampires.
Vacation or staycation?
Staycation.
Guacamole or salsa?
Guacamole.
Boxers or briefs?
Boxer briefs.
Oh, hey, whoa, look at that innovation. Instagram famous or infomercial famous?
Oh, infomercial famous, man. I love the voice.
Oh, yeah, those go much longer, too. All right, save 100 strangers or one loved one?
Oh.
I guess... Do you need some AI to figure this one out?
ChatGPT, if then else. No. We'll go with the loved one. That's what I'm supposed to say.
Oh, you just made 99 enemies. All right, last one. Second chance at love or second chance for your career? I already know the answer.
Second chance for love, baby.
Oh, no, not for you, Larry. This is second chance at career.
I've been married 22 years, so I think I'm good there.
Yeah.
All right. That was fun.
That was awesome, man. That was a lot of fun. It was fun going through those. So there's a couple of tough ones there, Larry, but you did a good job.
Thanks, I appreciate you.
Before we let you go, I want to ask you one more thing. So what's one question you wish that we would have asked you, and how would you have answered it?
Yeah, I saw that on the questionnaire, and I actually told Kevin, I wish you hadn't asked me all these questions, because I really don't know, to be honest with you, other than, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, asking more about what's behind the scenes, what goes into building a brand, what goes into being an entrepreneur, what goes into setting yourself apart. And I think it's just that willingness to fail and fail bigly. That's not even a word, but fail bigly.
I like it though.
Yeah, you got to commit 100%, and a lot of times you're going to fail 100%. I failed 100% in just about everything I've ever done. If you go back to the alcoholism, I almost failed life because I would have died. Even when they took me to rehab, they had to turn around and call an ambulance because the rehab facility couldn't stabilize my vitals. So I'm the new guy at the rehab facility, and they're like, no, we can't keep this cat. He's already too far gone. Call an ambulance. So, spent 4 or 5 days in the hospital before I even got to go back to the place. So if you're going to, you've got to understand that you're going to fail. Okay. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter anything. You're going to fail. There's a good chance that one of these talks that I'm going to give in the next 10 weeks, it's not going to hit. I'm going to have a bad set, if you want to call it that. And it's not going to hit as hard as I want it to. There's a very good chance of that. And you have to be willing to take those risks. You have to be willing to understand that your ego is going to here. I literally just got back from Denver today. I went to a podcast conference called Podcast Movement. I was sitting there on day one, meeting up with all my friends, and we're in this hallway, where everybody's walking through, heading their way to the big conference from the hotel side, from the room side, going into the conference side. And they had all these tables and chairs that are lined up there. And I was sitting there just bragging about how I've been working out, riding my bike. And everybody's like, yeah, dude, you've lost so much weight. You're looking good, blah, 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 blah. I sit down in a chair, and all of a sudden you hear a crack, like a mighty oak in the forest, and then slowly I just
we have got to do this. We have got to put this picture on the podcast right here. Jason, he put this on Facebook. Because before he can take that down, I'm going to go steal that picture so we have it.
You'll notice there's probably 80 likes to it, or 80 reactions of some sort, 80, 90 reactions. And I put it out there because of that fact.
Yeah. It's great.
Because you have to be to fail, and you have to be able to be able to represent yourself in your failures too. Yeah, falling down in front of hundreds of people, or having a chair crack and break under your fat ass in front of all these people, that sucks. But it's stuff like that's going to happen, and you have to embrace it. You have to accept it. Then you have to use that to build on it. People looked at that, and the fact that I put it on social media and showed that side, that reality side of building a brand, makes me more human.
Yeah.
And it makes it more relatable to other people, and you have to be willing to do the same thing. So that was the line of questioning that would have been really, really good. So I asked it for you, and hopefully there's some value that people got out of that answer.
Dude, that was a great answer too. That's authenticity. When you're willing to be authentic, then that's what makes you human, right? And that's what people need to see.
I've never failed in life and not grown from it. I mean, so honestly, that's the most accurate answer you could have given. Honestly, I believe we all grow from failure. Everybody does. And you get better as a result of it.
Yeah, 100%.
So, guys, this has been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. Jason, for us, this is a bit unconventional and not kind of following our normal formats for our podcast, but that's kind of what made this more fun. Hopefully the listeners enjoyed this as well. And I guess, Larry, we'd be remiss if we didn't at least ask, where can the listeners find you if they want to get more information about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on every social media platform. Typically, it's the Larry Roberts here. So you're just like my little guy here. You can find me Instagram, Facebook. I'm more active on Facebook and LinkedIn than anywhere else. Or if you want to talk about AI, you want to talk about any kind of podcasting, any content creation, you can reach out to me at meetlarryroberts.com. You can jump on my calendar. We can have a 30-minute conversation, and I can see how I can help you.
Show the ball ahead one more time. This thing's amazing. Look how realistic this thing looks, Jason.
I mean, this is nuts here.
I don't know who made that, but that's incredible.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
The hoodie, I mean, everything, microphone. I mean, it's nuts.
Maybe we need to get bobbleheads, Jason. I don't know. One day.
I think so, man. I think so.
Yeah, that's going to help.
We'll wait till we get 10,000 subscribers or something.
There you go.
Well, folks, you heard it here. Give this guy some love. Larry, thank you so much for being on our show tonight and for this great conversation. You know, it wasn't all about cybersecurity, but it was all great. And I think our listeners have a lot of takeaways that they can get out of this conversation, regardless if they want to start something in podcasting or entrepreneurship or AI. There's plenty of information here that they can take away and do something with, or just in life, right? There was a great parts of that they can learn from your experiences. So thank you so much. And with that, we're going to call it a night, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We're pleased that we now offer and have many options for consuming the content of our episodes. We offer the audio-only versions on all major streaming audio platforms. We offer video and audio formats, so you can take in all of the rich content visually if you'd like to. That's over on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@the-Cyber-Distortion-Podcast. Don't forget to help us grow the podcast by subscribing while you're out there. Feel free to drop comments on what topics you'd like to see us cover for future episodes. You can also visit our brand new blog site. That's out at cyberdistortionpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, @DistortionCyber is our handle. We release discount codes, blurbs about upcoming episodes, blog links, and of course, talk about drop locations for swag while we're out at various cybersecurity conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON. Speaking of swag, we have officially opened up the long-awaited Cyber Distortion swag shop, which is accessible either on our blog site at cyberdistortion.com or online directly at cyberdistortionswag.shop. We have tons of really cool new swag to offer to help get the name out about the podcast, and we're releasing new items all the time. We're offering lots of discount codes right now at the end of most of our episodes, so listen for those and watch the Twitter page because we drop those there as well. I believe that's it for now, so until next time, cheers everybody, take care, stay diligent, and remember, you are the last line of defense.